Welcome to this week's episode of my podcast, Is Breakfast Included? Today on the show, I sit down with my good friend, Kenny Barnwell. Now, Kenny is a guitar tech, a production manager, a published author, an actor, a motivational speaker, if you will. Man, Kenny does it all. And he took the time out of his day, away from his newborn baby, to come and talk to little old me. It was a great conversation. Kenny's got an amazing story of where he come from to where he is now, and it's nothing short of a miracle. Anyway, it was a great conversation. Let's check it out. I usually ask you to introduce yourself. Tell me who you are, what you do, where you came from.
Hey, what's up? My name is Kenny Barnwell. I currently am home based in Tampa, Florida. I'm from Villa Rica, Georgia, small little, well, I can't say small little town outside of Atlanta anymore. It's grown, but when I was growing up there, I grew up on a dead-end dirt road out in the sticks. Grew up with deaf parents. And what I got into these days is the music industry. And long story short, what I do now is still the music industry. I'm not sure what you want me to say, Bernie.
No, man.
What else?
I met you. You were a guitar tech. You've also been a production manager. You've done a little bit of everything. Where we can start is, how did you get into what the touring industry? What's
getting into the touring industry? Yeah. Well, there's a. It's a long story, to be honest with you. Well, I mean, it just depends on where you want to start. Because when I first fell into the event industry in general, I was kind of, well, to be honest with you, homeless at the time. I was kind of just crashing on people's couches or staying in my car and doing whatever I could work-wise, construction jobs, or really any job to make money. And I found someone that I was doing some work for on her house who knew someone that owned a stagehand company. And so I got my way into the music industry as a stagehand. I'm not sure if your listeners know what a stagehand is, but basically a local laborer to help build events. And from there, I was able to kind of position myself to being able to get on tour with bands. So
when you say homeless, if you don't mind me asking this question, how did you end up homeless?
Well, man, choices, bad choices. I'm telling you, man, it's like, it's interesting because I grew up in a small little town, and I was the youngest of five. Mm-hmm. And so I was last left in the house when my parents were going through a divorce. And so I took it pretty tough. And they were going through this divorce when I was 14, I guess, 14 into 15. Mm-hmm. And during that time, I was taking it rough that my parents were going through this, and my mom was leaving, our little town, and I had to choose between which parents. And just through all that, I found drugs at a really young age, And once when you kind of start to rabbit hole down that path, it's just one bad choice after another. And I just found myself at 15 and a half, 16, on the streets. Yeah. Quite literally,
And so once you found this a stagehand company, so to speak, were you still in those habits, or had you started making your way out of that?
Most definitely have been making my way out of it. I mean, I think if you're not, I think you get what you focus on. And at the time when the stagehand opportunity fell in my lap, I was focusing on getting my life better.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll say this, Kenny. We've known each other for a few years. You're one of the most motivated people I know. So to make a long story somewhat shorter, once you got into the live music industry as a stagehand, how long did it take you from there to become a touring tech?
Well, man, I mean, it was within a year and a half, I was able to grab my first tour. So I started when I was 18 as a stagehand. Yeah, I mean, I was just 20 or about to turn 20 when I got on my first tour. But I mean, it's I say it like that, but it wasn't so straightforward, obviously.
No, I was a local stagehand too before I started touring.
Yeah, and I know where you're getting at. I mean, if you'd like me to share, it's one of the things that I'm most passionate about is the event industry, because to be honest with you, when I fell into the stagehand work and stuff, I mean, I was homeless, and I know I say it kind of blasé these days, but it's like at the time it was like I was years into making bad choices, and it could have gone really, really bad. And when I found stagehand work, I found something that was just unbelievably fulfilling. And through that, I realized, I was like, man, this is an industry, the event production industry, full of different career paths and opportunities, and none of them required a degree. I mean, because I was a high school dropout as well.
Yeah,
I'd got my GED, but it's like, man, this whole world of doing things, that was very purposeful. It was like night after night of doing these shows, even as a stagehand, you could, feel the reward at putting on these events. So it was like, man, there's all this engineering work or tech work or design work or carpentry work, all of this, stuff that requires.
A lot of people don't understand challenges. Is when you show up for the gig, you could be put with the backline, you could be put with lighting, you could be put, like you said, carpenters. You do something different every night.
As a stagehand, you certainly did, and you got to gain a lot of experience. I mean, back in when I started as a stagehand too, things were a lot more analog and bigger and heavier, and there was a lot of people climbing up on the trusses to move, focus lighting, and things were a little bit more archaic. These days, it's high technology and stuff, which is just as advanced and cool. But it's just, I was just blown away by the opportunity to build it into a career. And during that short period of time, I just did everything I could. It's like, if you don't know what you want to do with your life, it's like, just do as much of the things that interest you the most,
Yeah.
So that's what I did, man. I just bounced around until I finally gotten an opportunity to, as a stagehand, work with a backline guy, which, if your listeners don't know, backline, what Bernie does is all the instruments on stage. And so I was working with a local backline guy, and he was telling me about, he works for a local backline company in Atlanta. And man, it was just like, look, I'll refer you. And I was able to get on with this backline company. And as you start to specialize in this industry, or really in all industries, but once you start to specialize, then you really become marketable. And that's what kind of bridged the gap for me to be able to get on tour.
Yeah. Did you start your first tour as a guitar tech, or just an all-around backline guy?
Exactly. My all-around backline guy. I toured with this guy named Van Hunt, and we were the opening act for Seal. And then, of course, during that run, we also played a bunch of small little clubs, and there was this R&B artist, and it was a van and trailer tour. I mean, me and the tour manager and the bass player split driving duties. And I did everything, monitors, backline, I mean, everything. So it was a crazy experience for my first tour. It was a 6-month tour, and we didn't even come back to Atlanta because of just all the driving,
Mm-hmm.
I just couldn't afford to get us back. It was boot camp, man. It's like it's the perfect way to dig in,
Yeah. Once you got out there, were you like, this is where I belong? Or was there ever that thought like, maybe I should just stay a local guy?
Man, I got to tell you, it was really, really, really difficult. The relationship between myself and the artist was okay. Was a little weird. I had issues with a tour manager. Learned a lot of lessons there. It wasn't a great experience. It was a guy that started with me that was supposed to kind of be the monitor guy, audio end of things, and help drive. About our, I don't know, second week out there, we were playing New York City, and he just up and left us right before a gig. And they were supposed to replace the guy. They didn't end up replacing the guy, of course. You know how that goes. It's like we'll all pitch in until we figure it out, and then all of a sudden we all have more roles, you know?
Yeah.
And so this is kind of what happened. But during that time, it was just like the tour manager and the artist, they just really riding this little kid. You know, I was a kid. I mean, when I say I was a kid, I looked like I was 16. Like, seriously. I looked like I was 12, probably, actually. Yeah. Seriously, I have a baby face, but boy, they just, you know, it was hard. And when I got back from that first tour, to be honest with you, Bernie, I didn't think I wanted to tour at that point. You know, I thought the travel part was pretty cool considering, but it was hard to sleep in the van, you know. It was hard to deal with all those personalities, you know, working with them and living with them. It was, you know, an out of the box experience that you can only know unless you're out there. And boy, I didn't know if I wanted to go back, to be honest with you.
So it was a crash course that, you know.
No doubt. I would say so.
And after that, how did you go back to being just a local guy, or did you jump on another tour? Were you referred?
Yeah, I ended up, when I got back, well, see, that's the thing, you know, it's like, I wanted to get on tour so bad. And so I didn't stay at that backline company very long, before I jumped on this tour. And when I got back to that backline company, my position had been replaced, you know, so it was kind of like, well, man, you know, you went on tour, but we couldn't save your job, you know?
Yeah.
It was just what it was. So I just went back to the grind of it all. You know, there's this local, grind where it's like between stagehand and kind of just like tech work, day rate type work. You just hustle it up, you know? And so I kind of went back to doing that, and it wasn't probably, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 months later, I got a call from, this guy, Monty Curry, this audio guy, and, was saying that he was going to refer me for a country gig. And, I didn't know anything about country music really at the time. I mean, I remember growing up listening to it.
Yeah.
You know, and so I get a call from this production manager, Howard, for Joe Nichols. This was, I mean, I was 20 years old. I wasn't even, you know, old enough to drink. I don't even think at that point. Maybe I was just 21, you know, and, I was able to get this gig. They took a chance on a guy in Atlanta because they were just out of people in Nashville, and they were kind of tired of the Nashville circle of options of techs.
Yeah.
And so they hired me, and man, I'm telling you, I mean, that was a great experience, but for about almost 5 years, I drove to, you know, outside of Atlanta to Nashville every week to catch the bus.
So from going from, this was a complete 180 from that first tour, the Joe Nichols tour.
Or, oh, you talking about the Van Hunt tour? The Joe Nichols tour, yeah,
complete
for sure.
180.
Yeah, complete 180. I mean, I you know, we were with Van Hunt, the opening act was for Seal, and so, I mean, I could clearly see that there was another level to this. I was a stagehand. I was aware of the level of touring.
Yeah,
that
but I mean the
experience,
you know? The experience
from
one experience to the other.
For sure, you know, I mean, and look, I've always had this desire to constantly level up, you know, and to grow, and so most definitely. I mean, I will say that at one point, I was like, oh well, I think I found my home with Joe Nichols, because that's the thing with country music. A lot of country bands is like, and old school bands, they want the same guys, you know, the same people for a long time. You know, there's not so much a rotating door. So,
yeah,
you know, I thought at one point Joe was going to be that for a while there, you know, but I was naive.
You were in the country world for a while.
Like a decade, man. Yeah. I had that opportunity to work with Trace Atkins. I worked with, Clint Black, Travis Tritt, where the band Perry, which I think that's kind of where we finally ended up kind of crossing paths.
That's where we crossed paths. I covered for you. I didn't know you. I was just called to come out and cover for this guy Kenny, who the band could not wait to get back.
Yeah, that's terrible. That's a terrible thing.
They were
Oh,
they were such good people, and I felt that all I heard
yeah.
every day was like, when's Kenny coming back? And I don't think I'm a terrible tech. I think they just liked you that much.
Yeah, well, you know how it is, man. I mean, it's such a comfort factor. You know, that's the thing. It's like we might take care of instruments and things like that, but we're also there as a as a comfort factor for these artists. You
Yeah,
know?
that security blanket.
Yeah. So I get it. I get it. Yeah, I had I mean, fortunately, in that time frame as well, I had an opportunity to be on a bunch of big tours, and you know, connect with all those people and those artists and really expand my network. People like the Keith Urban folks and Paisley, you know, went out with Reba and the Rascal Flatts people, like Shell, and just, you know, just a really, really awesome decade of country bands. And it was, I can't honestly, I can't even remember what year it was at this point, but I got an opportunity to once again grow. And, you know, it's interesting because I was at a crossroads with the band Perry, actually, where I could have been with them. They were one of those artists that was like family, put you on a salary type thing if you wanted, and benefits, and just stay with us and help us build the thing. But you know, when you're not growing, you're dying, they say, right? And
Yeah.
so no matter what, you know, no matter how much money, it's like, you know, you got to make a shift forward. And I had an opportunity. A friend of mine called me and said that he wanted to give me the Bieber gig. Just literally was like, man, you're the only guy that I would trust. They're looking for a Nashville guy to do this thing with Bieber and Cody Simpson. And I think he would be perfect for Justin because he was going to go to back and just stay with Train. And so he was just going to hand me the Bieber gig. I was like, wow, what an opportunity, you know? And so I did, man. I put my notice in with the band Perry and went to go do the Bieber gig. And it was a hard transition. It was hard for the artist because, again, their security blanket went away. And by this point, I was already over 4 years with the band Perry, I think, at this point.
Yeah.
You know? So kind of a tough thing for them. But for me, I had the opportunity to grow. But I'll tell you, here's the funny story about growth is, you know, when you choose to like go towards a goal, like the first thing that happens when you set out towards a goal is like the toughest part of the journey, right?
Yeah.
And that's what ended up happening. I mean, we were in rehearsals for a little over a month in Burbank, with Bieber, and it was awesome. We were doing the thing. We were about to go do this like large 15 city world tour all around. And so we all go home to go prepare for a week at home, and then we were going to go head out. And as soon as we get home, the next day, the tour manager calls like, Bieber doesn't want to do it. And it was just like, what? I'm out of a gig, man, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and so fortunately for me, you know, I had continued to network, but well, actually back then it was back when you could actually see what people posted on Facebook, in your circle. I made a post that I said, well, looks like I'm not headed out on the road after all, or something like that. And, I literally, like a couple hours later, I got a call from Howard Hopkins. You know Howard Hopkins?
I know who he is. We don't know each other personally.
Okay, well, production manager, and called me and said, hey, we just had to replace our guitar tech. We're over here in Europe. Can we fly you to Germany? Oh, he was with the Fray. And he's like, can we fly you to Germany tomorrow? Because we have a gig and we need to finish the rest of this, you know, 3 months tour or whatever in Europe. And I was like, okay. So, you know, it's just, that's the nature of this industry, man, how one gig can kind of fold into the next depending on your relationships and all that. But I tell you, Bernie, all this time that you're on the road, you know, a lot of people don't realize that life off the road is continuing to happen, you know? And during that time was probably the most tumultuous for me in my personal life.
Yeah.
Because what was going on in my personal life was I was going through this divorce of a 13-year marriage. And going through a divorce when you're touring and going through all of this stuff. I mean, life, right?
Yeah,
It's like, life happens. And so going through this period of time, but also trying to navigate this career of making these moves and stuff. And I'm also running this business and trying to help educate people on careers and tech products. And, as Bernie said, I've always been a pretty motivated guy rather. It just kind of came collapsing, all around me. So
yeah, I do remember that time. I do also remember, man, like you never showed any, I don't know what you were feeling inside when you were alone. I don't know that, but what I do remember from you, Ken, was that, you never showed it. You just kept moving forward. And I think after the fray, you went on to Ariana Grande.
Yep.
And you just
Yep.
I didn't find out about a lot of this stuff till I think you and I had a conversation several years later. But you never showed it, which is so popular now on social media. People want to show their like, this is what I'm going through. Like, you just kept moving forward. And I remember even like you had to move across country to LA and you crashed your truck. And there was it's like everything that could possibly go wrong with you in life was going wrong, but you just kept pushing forward.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, it's like from a perspective of going through the storm, you're always like, man, this just doesn't seem right. But in hindsight, it was all actually unfolding as it should, because I got to tell you, because of this destruction in my personal life, yes, I went out with Ariana Grande, ended up meeting my now wife, who was one of Ariana Grande's dancers. We met on that tour, got to travel the world with each other, and just incredible that we connected in that way, completely out of nowhere. Wasn't obviously looking for it, considering I was leaving a 13-year mess. And so that kind of came out of it. And another thing that unfolded was, I felt like, I had no clue about myself. And so I wanted to go figure that out too. And so that was a blessing. I ended up, man, I was in rehearsals for the Purpose tour, Bieber. And this was after Ariana Grande. I had moved to LA. Yes, you're right. I crashed my truck and really lost everything. By the way, I walked away from everything from that marriage, willingly, because I just wanted freedom, choice. And in rehearsals with Bieber, and I could care less, man. Like literally the best gig on the planet, probably. About to leave out for 2.5 years, so solid, right?
Yeah.
And I kept going into rehearsals every day, just not caring, man. Like I was doing the work as old Ken would. I mean, I'm soldering the cables, I'm building the stuff, I'm handing guitars off, I'm tuning the string, but there was no me in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you were just going through the motions, like just doing the gig.
Disconnected.
Yeah,
that's right. And so I just got out to Hollywood, just moved out there, Sherman Oaks, and so I'm going to rehearsal every day, going back home to my new apartment with my new girlfriend at the time, and starting fresh. And I was like, man, I always told myself if I was going to end up being that guy, that was those road guys that, and you see them all the time where they're like, they're hate being out there. It's the only way they know how to make real decent money.
Yeah.
So they just keep doing it as opposed to doing it because you want to do it.
Yeah.
And so they become curmudgeon, and so I was like, man, if I'm ever that guy, I'll fire myself. I'll go figure something else out, And I felt like I kind of hit that wall. And I mean, again, dude, best gig. I mean, about to go on the Purpose tour. Like, come on, world tour is awesome, right?
Yeah.
And I could care less. And so, yeah, man, I ended up putting my notice in, left the tour. And instead of leaving the tour, I did the whole burn the boats thing. You know that analogy, burning the boats?
Yeah.
To take the island. I literally sold my work box, my tools. I mean, like I literally sold everything that connected me with touring and events And I went and literally did the Hollywood thing for a while.
Yeah. I saw you on an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Oh, that's so funny. It's funny because it's true.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
It's funny because it's true. Yes, I was on Curb Your Enthusiasm. I've been on, been in movies and commercials. I had a commercial agent. Like I said, when I say I did the Hollywood thing, I did the Hollywood thing. And I literally have probably been on like 50 different episodes of things, probably more. You know, everything from Grey's Anatomy to Scorpion to the movie Bright. I mean, good times. But I actually went out there to kind of like not just pursue acting or anything like that, but a host. Like I love presenting.
Yeah.
I love hosting. It's something that I've always really loved doing. And it was one thing that like when I was teaching guitar tech videos on YouTube, a lot of people don't realize like I was the very first touring guitar tech, or really main guitar tech, any guitar tech showing any of that stuff on YouTube back when I was putting it out there. There just wasn't anybody doing it.
Yeah,
you know?
I meant to say that before, you know, when you were with the band Perry, that's when you and I connected. And I remember you sending me a message going, "Hey, I've got these videos up. You should check them out." And I started watching them. And I was new to all that at the same time. And I mean, I learned a lot from your videos, and I would message you and go, "Hey, how do you do this?" You know, and you were always very forthcoming with information. You never were like, learn for yourself.
Right,
you know?
right.
But I do remember you couldn't find videos like you were putting out, and this was in the 2008, 2009,
early 2000. Yeah, exactly. And so I still get people messaging me all the time saying, "Hey, dude, I learned from your videos." Literally, it's such a wild thing, but I've had like people all around the world when I've been on tours go, "Kenny from YouTube?" Like I'm dead serious. It's hilarious, you know.
Kenny's tech tips.
Yeah, Kenny's guitar tech tips, because it's such a niche thing of the thing that I was teaching, you know, within it all. So, I forgot where we were going with that.
You were telling me you wanted to be a host. You liked hosting.
Well, that's right, and that's kind of, you know, one outlet for me in those early days. And a lot of people, it wasn't just about the education and stuff like that. I never thought I was some great guitar tech. I just wanted to educate, wanted to present a message, you know. And so I thought, man, one thing I've always wanted to do is really level up my hosting. And I ended up going through hosting classes, improv classes at the Groundlings, the famous theater. I ended up getting trade show host agents that helped me book trade show hosting gigs. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's like you present basically items at trade shows and you do their demos and stuff like that, you know. Mm-hmm. I've done like voiceover stuff, and then like I've done some presentation and hosting things for certain people. And I also did a travel show series, a bunch of them, which you can see all this stuff on YouTube, but all in efforts to just kind of, man, see what I'm made of. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And so you're out there in Hollywood, you're doing the Hollywood thing. How long does that last?
I was out in Hollywood doing that for about 2.5 years. We lived in Sherman Oaks. So yeah, I mean, I was out there kind of doing the extra thing, but you know, at that time, because I had left the music industry, and you know, mind you, I just went through this divorce where I literally walked away from all assets that I'd ever owned, which at the time was a good amount. We had owned an antique shop and 5 rental properties between ourselves. So I walked away from all of it, and I crashed my truck. So I had the little Beamer convertible, of course, that my insurance money paid for after the truck accident. And otherwise, I mean, I was kind of back to square one. And of course, I had just left Bieber too, literally starting from nothing.
in a new industry.
I mean, and to be honest with you, man, I never looked at me doing acting and hosting and stuff like that like I teach career with our industry, which, you know, I looked at it as just something that I was like naively going to go and be a part of. And that's literally, it was kind of that naivety, that kind of dumb, you know, Southern guy coming in here to Hollywood that got me booked on so many things, man. I mean, I was like, constantly getting booked for things. And it was funny because, you're in that world of all these actors and they're all doing these classes and all this. And here's this guy just kind of fumbling through it, submitting himself on things, getting agents quickly. Like it was just interesting. But I didn't have any real solid steady income coming in. So during this time, Bernie, look, man, during this time, man, I was already a published author. By the way, I didn't forget to mention, wrote the book, right? The Backstage Pass.
Yeah, we didn't mention that.
It's fine. Just another thing, right? But seriously, all of this kind of like past life, that I had been living. Now here I am, in LA with this new life, trying to figure it out and trying to make it. And there's the very real thing about money, And so during this time, I'm doing whatever I could to make money, And so I drove for Postmates, Uber Eats, Lyft. I've done. I worked for a painter, construction guy for a while in LA. I did. I worked at a pet store for a while. And literally did all their social media stuff. I mean, I worked for a car dealership for a while. But long story short, it was while I'm doing acting and hosting and all that stuff, right? Because that's what people don't understand. It's like those people go out there to live that dream, but they still got to figure out how to make money and live. So, but yeah, man, what a trip that was. But just doing whatever. But during that time, my hosting coach, Shannon O'Dowd, she's amazing. You guys have seen her in so many things. But she goes, Kenny, you want to be a host and you want to be a travel show host and all this stuff. She's like, why don't you like put together something with your book where you're teaching and you're talking and you're presenting about all the things that you know and love about the industry. And at the time I was like, nah, I'm over the industry. I'm over it. I was like bitter, cause there was such a connection with my ex-wife, by the way, who was in the industry too. And so I was like, no. And she was like, man, I'm telling you, it's your zone, it's like your zone of genius. You can talk all the time about this. You can present about it without trying, and I'm just like, I don't want to, I don't want to do it. She's like, you could even go back out on tour. And if you're on tour, you could help, you could like sell some of this stuff. And I was like, no, I don't want to do it, And so she's just encouraging me to like host and present about what I want to present about, because it comes natural and you need money. And so I ended up recording my first online training course because of what she said. I said, well, if I'm not going to go out on tour or whatever, I can at least present and create this material because maybe I can sell it, And so, yeah, I created the touring music tech training program, and it was just like literally teaching people from no experience, no connections, which is what my book did on how to enter the music industry with no experience and build a successful career and get on tour with bands doing exactly what I did. Right.
Yeah.
And so, when I did that, I ended up launching it, and man, it changed my life. I ended up going from broke to selling 26 $1,000 courses, and it changed my life. And I was like, holy crap. I was like, I can make good money teaching people, how to
from
build
everything
a career.
I've learned. Yeah. From
everything that I've learned, I was like, this is unbelievable, And then so next month comes rolling around, posted about it again, and this time nobody signed up for my program. I was like, but what happened last time? I had all these people, and come to find out, it was just like, it's just an audience thing. I had, basically sold out my customer base right away. And so anyways, long story short, I ended up having to figure out how to market and sell my products. And during this time, I ended up enrolling myself in a whole bunch of digital marketing certification courses, Facebook ad certification courses, just anything I could do to figure out how to better sell this, And, long story short, during that time, my hosting coach was right. She was like, look, why don't you go on tour and people would probably buy from the guy that's actually doing the thing that he's trying to get people to buy. Right.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't want to do it. She's like, look, it'll solve all this stuff for you, Now, I will say, Bernie, it took about a year and a half for the calls to stop coming. You know what I mean?
Like, stop coming for gigs.
Yeah, from road gigs. It took about a year and a half for people to know that Kenny was out.
Yeah.
And then I said, okay, well, she's probably right. At least if I go back out on tour, I'll go back out there on my terms. I'll go back out there with the understanding that I'm going to get my message and my education out to the world. My books out to the world. I had started writing Stagehand 101, the second book, like to add to the arsenal of products. Like, I was like, okay, I'll do it. I was like, we could use the money. I'll do it. I ended up making a call to Takumi, and literally within 24 hours, he's calling me and said, hey man, you got the option of 3 different gigs. Which ones do you want? And I was like, the road. Such is the dang road.
Right.
So I ended up going out with Chris Isaac. Begrudgingly went back out there. But I mean, I was grateful that I did, obviously, because it's, every step of the way, no matter what, good or bad, is part of your journey to get where you're at. And so, I didn't have the best experience out with Chris Isaac, not from Chris, but just from a working experience. And, so lots of lessons there, Bernie.
Yeah.
I gotta tell you, it's nothing but lessons. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And after Chris Isaac, who did you go off with?
Well, Seal, I think that was my kind of, transition to go back into Seal because, that's exactly what happened. I ended up getting done with the Chris Isaac tour, and I decided at that point, okay, I'll stay in it. And my friend Steve was with Seal. Steve was like, crazy story about Steve. Steve and I have been keeping in touch for like over 15 years or 14 years, ever since when I was on tour with Van Hunt, my very first tour. We opened up for Seal, and Steve was Seal's guitar tech back then still.
Yeah.
And here I was, this 19-year-old kid, and Steve remembers that. So anyway, Steve and I have stayed in touch a long time. That's how long it took me to actually get a gig from Steve. was 15 years, but no. So he asked me to come to sub for him, and that's when I ran into you in Singapore.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, you went to work for
we had
Seal
breakfast the next morning.
We did. I paid for it.
Yeah.
It was free. It was free before anyone thinks I'm a jerk. It was free. Anyway,
by the way, I just want to say something that, like, we have this conversation, this podcast, for everyone's listening, and it's just like, it's so crazy to say the things. It's like, oh, that's when I ran into you in Singapore when I was out with Seal, dude, and you were with Duran Duran, and we were, it's like, it's almost unbelievable stuff. It's so hard to sometimes just like,
man, I've had this conversation with a friend of mine where I tell them that, like, when I come home, like I can acclimate getting back into regular life easily.
Yeah.
But if I go see friends, I feel like such a douche when they go, hey, what did you do last week? I'm like, I was in London. Yeah. And then you hear those words coming out of your mouth. You're like, yeah, maybe just shut up. Because not everybody gets to fly to London for one gig and come back the next day. And it's just... Yeah. So what you say, that crazy conversations that we could have, like, oh, we ran into each other in Singapore.
I know, in Singapore. And then we just... Yeah, I know, man. It's just so
Seal.
Crazy. I know. It's just so wild because I grew up on a dead-end dirt road off another dirt road in Georgia. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, I'm the least likely candidate to have had the experiences. I mean, considering. And so I actually, one of the reasons why I'm so motivated, and actually the reason why, is because of gratitude. I can step back and go, okay, well, I'm not in jail or dead, from that period of my life. And, I've gotten to experience some incredible stuff. And it's like, man, I stop and soak it in regularly. I just regularly focus on the good,
And that's what I think that's what it's about. Like you mentioned earlier, like you didn't want to become one of those techs or slash roadies who's just jaded, who's just out there just making the money. And that's what we do. We do it to make the money. But if you don't love what you do, you're not, if I talked to someone a few weeks ago and her motto is if you love what you're doing, you'll never work a day in your life. And that's very true.
I agree with you, man. I 100% agree with you. And I will to add to that though. It's really about why you do. And the reason why I say that is because I know plenty of people that are under that whole, I'm just out here for a paycheck, that don't suck the life out of the job. And it's because they're really in love with why they do it, and the reason why they do it is at home, right? Being a good husband or a good father or something like that, And so I just think that how you operate on the job, Yeah.
And it's like you said, I was trying to make a point. I forgot, but the gratitude, like the not taking it for granted. Like, yeah, we ran into each other in Singapore, but I can count the times how many times I've been back to Singapore. Because as a kid, I'm like you. I thought I was going to live and die in the same country town that I grew up in. But as a kid, I was always fascinated with Singapore. I don't know why.
Singapore is awesome.
So when I go there, I think, wow, this is the place that I read about that I never thought I'd go to. I never thought I'd go. London was so far away to me as a kid. Now I refer to it as my second home because everything I do starts in London with the band.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
So now I go to London. I have friends there that, if you would have told, 10-year-old Bernie, like, dude, one day you're going to have friends on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. You're going to have friends
all these experiences. Dude, I know. I mean, I literally got to live in London because this work life allowed it. I lived there for a while.
Yeah, I remember that. You moved around a lot for a minute.
Yeah, we have been moving around a lot for a minute.
I think from London, I don't know if you came back to LA or you went to New York.
New York City. We went back to New York City for a while, yeah. And then back to LA, yeah.
And then you guys moved in the middle of the pandemic to Florida.
Moved in the middle of the pandemic. Well, we moved to the start of the pandemic to Atlanta first, and then we moved down to Tampa. Yeah. But it's just so wild, man. I think about those stories, those crazy stories, Bernie. And I have one, and I got the photo on my phone. But Seal plays Russia a lot. We used to go to Russia a lot, and it's just one of these stories. I got to say it. So we go to Russia a lot with Seal, and we were playing in Moscow at the Kremlin. You ever been to the Kremlin?
I've only seen the Kremlin. I've never been there.
Okay, so we played the Kremlin. Well, there is a private theater underneath the Kremlin, and when I say private theater, I'm talking like the Fox Atlanta, like beautiful 7,000 seater, like underneath the Kremlin. And we were playing the Kremlin, and we were, for whatever the show was, and we were in these dressing rooms, and these dressing rooms are all gold and gaudy and all of that stuff, just like what you would expect this Russian wealth, and all these bodyguards everywhere outdoors. And so there I am in the dressing room with our keyboard player, who was also the music director for Adele, and then Seal, and I'm playing Seal's guitar. And something I love to do is I love to sing 90s country songs. But I love to sing the artist that I'm working for's song in 90 country style. Like even when I was with Ariana, it'd be like, bang, bang into the roof. You want it. So anyways, and so I was doing this with Seal, in the dress room. I was like, you're never going to survive unless you get a little crazy. And Seal freaking loved it. And the keyboard player at the time snapped a quick photo and, a little while later texted it to me. And it's unreal. There's Seal and me and, my friend Eric, and I just like those moments. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
Like
man.
those moments. It's man, the USO shows that I got to be a part of back in 2008 in country music, dude, getting to go to Iraq and Afghanistan, Kuwait, like, man, just incredible stuff, man. This music industry life.
It is, and I think we're very fortunate. I don't know if I can speak for you, but I don't take it for granted. You know,
No.
the things I get to do, I never know when it's going to be taken away, as we found out a year ago. You know, but man, I do want to thank you for taking the time to do this.
Thank you so much for stepping up and helping me with the band Perry all those years ago.
Hey, we would have never crossed paths had I not done that.
I know. And thanks so much for buying me breakfast in Singapore. I got to tell you, Bernie, this is not the end, man. We've got much more because I got a lot to learn. So I look forward to our next breakfast together.
Well, man, my podcast is called "Is Breakfast Included?" So breakfast is included, Kenny. What would you have right now?
If breakfast was included, what would I have right now? Well, to be honest with you,
what a segue, right? What a segue.
Yeah, well, I love it because look, I'm on keto right now because I'm trimming it up. But I'm gonna have a cheat day for this breakfast and have a nice acai bowl and pancakes, of course.
Right on,
that's
man.
all I got.
Well, that's all you need. You know, Kenny, man, you can't come from more humble beginnings than you did, and you've really made a life for yourself, for your wife, for your newborn. And man, I'm proud to call you my friend, dude. And I appreciate you taking the time to do this. And
thank you, brother.
I hope we cross paths soon, because it's just not about the breakfast; it's about the company, brother.
Most definitely, Bernie. You're the man.
All right, man.
Love you, man.
Take care of yourself. Well, right on. That was Kenny Barnwell. Man, check him out on Instagram at @TheKennyBarnwell. Kenny's probably one of the most positive people I know, one of the most motivated people I know, and I'm proud to call him my friend. So go to his Instagram, check it out, follow him, and let me know what you think. All right, guys, I'm done. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you next week.